Oh, just everything. Like some of the clothes I'm wearing, how hard it is.
Diane Keaton could have married almost anyone she wanted. Some of Hollywood's most iconic men were drawn to her brilliance, her humor, her intelligence, and her unmistakable presence. Yet despite the attention, the admiration, and the opportunities for a traditional romantic ending, she chose a different path. Not because she couldn't find love, but because she understood herself deeply enough to know that marriage was not the life she wanted. Diane Keaton's story is not about what she lacked, but about what she protected: her independence, her curiosity, and her freedom to evolve without compromise. Early life. Before the hats and the spotlight, long before she became a style icon or an Oscar winner, Diane Keaton was Diane Hall, born on January 5th, 1946, in Los Angeles, California. She grew up in a household that appeared traditional on the surface, with a father who worked as a real estate broker and civil engineer, and a mother who stayed home to raise the family. But her mother, Dorothy, carried an artistic spirit that left a lasting impression on Diane. Dorothy loved photography, performance, and once even won the Mrs. Los Angeles pageant, a full theatrical production that introduced young Diane to the power of the stage. Sitting in the audience, watching her mother bask in applause and light, Diane felt something awaken inside her. She didn't want an ordinary life. She wanted expression, creativity, and the freedom to be seen. Finding inspiration and a voice. Raised in a Free Methodist household that emphasized discipline and structure, Diane nevertheless gravitated toward women who embodied independence and strength. She admired Katharine Hepburn, not for glamour, but for the unapologetic way Hepburn portrayed women who didn't wait for permission to live fully. At Santa Ana High School, Diane found her voice on stage, taking on emotionally demanding roles like Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire. Even as a teenager, she wasn't performing to impress, she was performing to explore human emotion. Acting became less about applause and more about truth, a philosophy that would define her entire career. Leaving the expected path behind college never quite suited Diane. She attended Santa Ana College and later Orange Coast College, but the traditional academic route felt confining. She wanted movement, risk, and growth, so she did what many dream of but few attempt. She moved to New York City. There, she trained at the neighborhood playhouse, immersing herself in the Meisner technique, which emphasized listening, presence, and emotional honesty. While studying, she supported herself by singing in nightclubs, quietly building confidence and stage presence. Around this time, she discovered that another actress had already registered her birth name with Actors Equity, prompting her to choose a new professional identity using her mother's maiden name. Diane Keaton wasn't just a new name, it was the beginning of self-definition, Broadway, and early career choices. In 1968, Diane Keaton joined the original Broadway production of Hair as an understudy. The show was bold and controversial, known for pushing boundaries, including a brief nude scene. Participation was optional, and while some performers accepted the bonus offered for it, Diane declined, not out of judgment, but because it didn't align with who she was. That quiet decision reflected a pattern that would follow her throughout life. She would always choose authenticity over approval. After Hair, she auditioned for Woody Allen's play, Play It Again, Sam. Despite concerns about her height compared to Allen, she won the role and earned a Tony Award nomination, marking her as a rising talent to watch. Breakthrough in film, The Godfather years. Diane Keaton made her film debut in Lovers and Other Strangers, which led director Francis Ford Coppola to cast her as Kay Adams in The Godfather in 1972. Surrounded by powerful male performances, Diane brought quiet strength and emotional restraint to a character navigating love within a morally complex world. While some critics initially underestimated the role, time revealed her importance to the story's emotional grounding. She returned in The Godfather Part 2, where Kay's internal conflict and eventual resolve gave the character greater depth. Diane's performance demonstrated that presence doesn't always need volume. Sometimes it's the stillness that resonates most. Love stories. Without a script. Diane Keaton's romantic life has fascinated the public for decades, not because of scandal, but because of its honesty and humanity. She shared meaningful relationships with several prominent figures, including Woody Allen, Al Pacino, and Warren Beatty. Each relationship reflected a different chapter of her life, shaped by timing, growth, and personal boundaries. With Allen, there was deep creative collaboration. With Pacino, a passionate connection marked by intensity and difference. With Beatty, admiration and intellectual spark. None of these relationships failed because of a lack of love. They ended because Diane refused to abandon herself to fit someone else's vision of partnership. Why marriage never fit. The idea of marriage never held the same appeal for Diane Keaton as it did for many of her peers. Much of this understanding came from observing her mother, a woman who devoted herself entirely to family. While quietly setting aside personal dreams, Diane sensed that marriage, as it was traditionally defined, often required women to sacrifice parts of themselves. For her, independence was not negotiable. She feared that marriage might mean losing her sense of self, her creative autonomy, and her freedom to change. Rather than risk resentment or regret, she chose honesty and solitude over compromise, motherhood on her own timeline. Although Diane Keaton never married, she did choose motherhood later in life. At age 50, following the death of her father, she felt a shift in perspective and adopted her daughter, Dexter. 5 years later, she adopted her son, Duke. Becoming a mother was not something she rushed into or followed out of expectation. It was a deliberate, thoughtful choice made when she felt emotionally ready. Raising 2 children as a single parent, Diane embraced motherhood with humility and dedication, often describing it as the most meaningful experience of her life. She proved that family does not require traditional structures to be complete. Navigating controversy with loyalty. One of the more complex aspects of Diane Keaton's public life has been her continued friendship with Woody Allen amid long-standing controversy surrounding him. Diane has consistently stated that her support comes from her personal experiences and beliefs, acknowledging that others may see the situation differently. Her stance has drawn criticism, but she has never claimed universal truth, only her own. This chapter of her life reflects a recurring theme. Diane makes choices based on personal conviction, even when those choices are unpopular, and she accepts the consequences without spectacle. Health struggles and personal recovery. Behind the confident public image, Diane Keaton has openly shared her struggles with bulimia during her early career. The pressure to conform to industry standards of thinness triggered a destructive cycle that lasted several years. Though outwardly successful, she lived with secrecy and shame until she sought help and began recovery. Diane later described the disorder as an addiction, one that required lifelong awareness. Speaking openly about it became part of her healing, and her honesty helped reshape conversations about mental health and body image in Hollywood. Aging, honesty, and acceptance. As she grew older, Diane Keaton refused to hide from the realities of aging. Rather than chasing youth, she spoke candidly about fear, mortality, and the emotional weight of time. She acknowledged that aging doesn't necessarily get easier, but it does get clearer. Her openness resonated with many who saw in her a rare figure willing to tell the truth without despair or denial. Diane's acceptance of aging became another act of rebellion in an industry that often demands illusion. A life fully chosen. Diane Keaton's life is not defined by what she didn't do, but by what she consciously chose. She didn't marry, but she loved deeply. She didn't follow convention, but she built a family. She didn't chase perfection, but she pursued truth. Her story challenges the idea that fulfillment comes from following a script written by society. Instead, she shows that fulfillment comes from listening inward, honoring personal boundaries, and having the courage to live differently. Final reflection. Diane Keaton stands as a reminder that there is no single blueprint for happiness. Her life proves that independence can be rich, motherhood can be intentional, love can exist without permanence, and fulfillment can come from authenticity rather than approval. She didn't reject marriage out of bitterness or fear, but out of clarity. And in doing so, she created a life that is unmistakably, unapologetically her own,